Hi, I'm Nikolaj, and I'm an artist here at Press Play, and I'm gonna walk you through the making of a piece of concept art. So when I start a new painting, I obviously start with a blank canvas. And I either start blocking in colors, or in this case, I start using a line sketch where I draw much like you do with pencil. For this particular piece, I knew well ahead of time that I was going to be doing it. So I had plenty of time to prepare mentally for the image, and I had a pretty good idea of what composition I was going to be going for and what was going to be in the image. I knew I had to have machinery protruding through the ground. I knew I had to have a hillside hit by sunlight, and it kind of shows in the way I'm sketching because it's mainly placing stuff and putting stuff down in the picture, where normally I would be moving things around a lot, changing the composition, and maybe even starting over, changing my mind. But in this case, it's mostly making sure that everything fits in the image and it has a sense of perspective and a flow to how everything is located. So what you see me doing now is what's called the value phase, and that's where I block in the lights and the darks, and I try to capture a sense of depth, a sense of atmosphere, and make sure that it's easy to see which part of the image goes where. I'm using the lasso tool as just a quick way to block it out, and it's going to give me a lot of nice sharp edges without me spending a lot of time. As you also see, I am changing my mind once here. In the beginning, the hillside in the front is darker than the background, but after saving, I then change that to, there we go, to being brighter. Next step is putting color in the sky, and this is just overall atmospheric color. I'm using a gradient map to do this, and then blocking in the foreground and background once again with the warms in the front and the cooler colors in the background. I'm taking good care not to make too many details at this stage. I am putting in a few touch of details at places to kind of get a feel for what it might become when it's finished, but I try to keep a high pace and making sure that I work all over the image most of the time to not get buried in doing detail. One thing that you'll notice is that the grass on the hill is far from green, even though it is the natural color of grass. This is a design decision that we have been making due to some previous pieces of concept art that I've made, where I tried staying away from green as an artistic way of giving the image a style and capturing a mood, which is a bit more ominous than perfectly green, hilly landscapes with blue skies and white clouds. So by straying away from the normal, you also create an atmosphere of something being slightly off, which is something I wanted to capture because the game is probably going to have like a kind of scary premise. At least there's a lot of stake for the players. It's not happy sunshine time going around in the Knoxville world. So now I'm actually just trying out details for the first time. I had all the colors in place, and I felt it was maybe a bit too early, but I wanted to try having details in just to get a sense of the level of fidelity that I wanted to achieve with the image. And using these rocks as a playground to try detail was too tempting. So maybe I should have waited, but I went for it, and it's so much fun doing these sharp hewn cliff sides, so I went with that. And as you see, I'm using the lasso tool and big brushes a lot to create these slightly structured but generally smooth surfaces with some really hard cuts in them. It's part of the art style that we want to try. This we're calling it kind of clean, I guess, that the surfaces don't have a lot of noise on them, but they're pretty clean, but overall they're still gonna have a kind of realistic expression to them, but with a style. They're gonna be stylized, so not to look exactly like nature. And just trying out grass and seeing how it's fading to blue in the distance. And here I'm picking out colors into the grass from around the painting. I'm using some reds from the dirt and some blue from the sky to integrate it. And again, experimenting with atmosphere. I want the back edge of that grassy hill to recede and get a good sense of depth. And now I think it's becoming more clear how this is not it's not a naturalistic hill. It's a machine. It is a construction made of hexagonal areas of very fake mountainside. It's a juxtaposition between the so far away in nature kind of look of this mountainside, not a road, not an airplane in sight, and then this huge machinery kind of driving the whole thing. While the focus of this piece of artwork is definitely not character design or even much of action illustration, putting putting these two small guys in there just makes the image slightly more meaningful. So they get silhouetted at this point just to kind of have an idea of where they'd go. And as I said, I wanted to stray away from the greens and the grass, so I added some red, which I'm going to regret later, because while it does take green away, being a complementary color, it also brings the far end of the hillside to the foreground. At this point, I decide that I'm gonna need more detail on the robot arms. I did a very quick sketch in the beginning, and that took me a piece of the way, but bluffing these mechanical structures is not quite the same as just faking it, I guess you could say, with grass, where you just insinuate what's going on. You need to plan out these mechanical parts a bit more for them to make sense and have a robust feeling and that mechanical vibe. One of the things we talked about is how there might be a more reddish, more ominous and scary feel to this machinery, which is why I'm trying to light it with a soft red light coming from the inside of the mountain, just fleshing out things. You'll sometimes see me turning everything on and off. That's usually when I want to try and add something to the background or use what's called adjustment layers, which is a bit like, I guess, filters for photography or like post in video. So at this point, I decided that the two characters, the two humans in the initial sketch, were too rough and too ugly. So I fade down the image to be able to do a good crisp line art and then just give them another pass to make them somewhat more believable. They are not the focus of the piece, but they shouldn't be a distraction and they shouldn't distract from the overall look. So making sure that they're just good enough for them to work in the image is very important. And it's fun drawing characters as well. So it's also important not to spend too much time on them in what is obviously an environmental and art style piece. So at this point, I had a discussion with Johnny, the lead artist on the project, and he wanted to kind of see if I could bring more color around the picture, but also include more than simply grass and rocks. So I started working on this shrubbery, which I don't know exactly what bush it is. I guess it's kind of blueberry-ish, but with flowers. Trying to pick colors from around the image here and just working a bit with the atmosphere. And at this point, the image is pretty close to finished. And yeah, if you look at the timescale, we're only 2/4 through. And that's because the final details, they always take a lot of time, like nailing, especially for what is a mood piece like this, nailing the exact mood and feeling of lighting. In this case, Les, art director and Johnny, wanted a more defined feeling of light. So I'm adding some cast shadows and increasing the contrast in the image by adding light to the areas around the focal point and in the front, and also fleshing out the nearest mountain in the background so that it doesn't come too stage-like, simply giving a sense of depth and that the world continues behind what's going on right in the front. At this point, I'm exclusively using colors already established in the image. We don't want the world to become too colorful. Not that it should be gray or desaturated or purely brown, but we want to control our colors pretty tightly so it doesn't become happy-go-lucky or like overly cartoonish. We definitely want style, but we don't want to make it childish or silly in its appearance. Adding in a bit of grime to the sides of the mechanical shell. And one thing I talked with Johnny about was rhythm in the rocks. They were very similar. So here I'm collapsing a couple of rocks together to make sure that there are large and there are small rocks, and it's not too much almost like a drum beat, tick, 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 but more dynamic in the way the pattern is. Working with some effects to give that feel of heavenly light, that the sunshine from above is kind of coming through this haze and kind of blurring stuff in the distance or stuff in light slightly. So this was me just checking with a previous piece of concept art I did, one that has established the color palette that I'm using here, and I'm gonna be putting this in the blog together with the video, so you can see that, maybe with some other pictures as well. But that's the first piece where we felt like pretty happy about the colors and the mood in the image, how the sky kind of felt. And I'm literally trying to hit the same color space with this painting, so I'm bringing that in for reference, so I can see, okay, am I hitting it, am I not hitting it? Just adding a bit of film grain and controlling that grain, tweaking everything here towards the end of the painting. And I can say that painting this took roughly 4 hours, pretty close to, and it's sped up like 16 times. So that's what you're looking at here, adding more dirt to the machinery so it doesn't seem as brand new. Finding the light. And with the rocks, as I said before, I'm doing the same thing as I did with the grass in the background. I'm pulling the highlight colors and the bluish hues and the reddish hues and the greenish hues from other places in the image to make them feel like they're slightly reflecting the light around them and make them blend and be consistent. So here at the end, even though I added the red earlier, I decided that was a bad idea. So I'm trying to add a bit more haze and a bit more fog to the furthest part of the hillside to make it recede, pull it back, make the image deeper, and also adding one final fir tree to kind of define scale. And that's it. This is the finished image, and if you have comments or questions or want to know more, please do so in the comments or feel free to contact me. Bye!